Welcome to this explainer. Today we're taking ancient philosophy and translating it straight into a modern leadership playbook. We're going to unpack the absolute secrets to becoming emotionally untouchable at work. We'll be walking through 7 powerful habits derived directly from Stoic philosophy, designed to help you beat burnout and stop your emotional reactivity right in its tracks.
So, picture this for a second. A completely missed deadline, maybe a sudden budget cut, or a really harsh comment from a board member. Most of us just assume the anxiety we feel in those moments is normal, right? Well, the source text we're analyzing today argues something pretty profound. Your exhaustion doesn't actually come from the crisis itself. It comes from an untrained mind reacting to the chaos before it even understands what's happening. Emotional stability isn't about avoiding workplace problems, because let's face it, you can't. It's about entirely mastering your response to them.
To get you there, we'll break this down into 4 strategic phases: establishing your internal baseline, tactical communication, strategic foresight, and team dynamics. Let's jump in. Starting with phase 1, establishing your internal baseline. Okay, habit number 1 is mastering the dichotomy of control. Honestly, the majority of us are battling against reality 24/7. We stress over market shifts, we obsess over whether a client rejects our pitch, or we get totally derailed by a coworker's bad attitude. But the Stoics? They realize that true emotional tranquility starts the second you stop trying to control things that were never yours to control in the first place. You have to focus purely on your own effort, your discipline, and how you interpret things. Ask yourself, is this actually
why
control?
don't you hear me wonder?
Ancient executive of his own mind. This guy literally spent his life as a slave, enduring unimaginable hardship, including a master who intentionally broke his leg.
Oh, stop your freight train, let a lost man ride. Why don't you hear me wonder?
Stuff like, I always fail after losing a client. Minor obstacles are going to feel like giant mountains. But if you act as both,
Fare you well, darling, ain't coming back no more. Why don't you hear me wonder?
right along with mastering pause. Think about it. A frustrating stimulus. Maybe it's
Who been whispering
your immediate gut impulses
since I've been gone so long?
space between that stimulus.
Freedom call.
That space is the pause. It's exactly where your actual emotional intelligence lives. The Stoics knew emotions are just like waves. They rise up super fast, they feel totally overwhelming, but then they naturally wash away. If you train yourself to just sit in that pause, strong feelings severely impair your judgment. Firing off that furious Slack message the second you get mad or snapping at someone in a meeting is basically letting your emotions obliterate your logic. Let's be real, an emotional outburst isn't a show of power. Keeping a calm head, that is the ultimate display of true discipline. By simply hesitating, the intensity drops and reason gets to step back into the driver's seat.
Which brings us to habit 4, detaching from external validation. If you really look at what drives a lot of workplace anxiety, it's this desperate craving for validation. The emotionally untouchable leader stops chasing this. Public perception is inherently all over the place. You're the hero today and the villain tomorrow. If your emotional state is hanging on the opinions of your colleagues, you're always going to be fragile. You've got to shift your energy to your stable internal integrity. Did you act in alignment with your values? Yes? Well, that's all the validation you need.
All right, phase 3, strategic foresight.
Habit 5 is conducting what we call a corporate pre-mortem. The Stoics used this practice called negative visualization. Now, they weren't just being pessimistic, it was all about preparation. If you assume a project is going to go flawlessly, the very first delay is going to feel like a full-blown crisis. But if you mentally prep for uncooperative stakeholders or sudden budget cuts, you entirely eliminate the emotional shock of it. When things inevitably go sideways, you don't crash. You just adjust on the fly because you've already solved the problem in your head.
And that ties perfectly into habit 6, embracing voluntary discomfort. Listen, comfort softens the mind. It really does. If your workday is always perfectly smooth and easy, your mind literally forgets how to cope with stress. Then, the absolute slightest annoyance feels like the end of the world. This is exactly why ancient leaders would purposefully put themselves through mild forms of suffering. Cold showers, working in tough conditions, just to build up that mental callous. When you voluntarily embrace this comfort,
why don't you hear me wonder?
Let me be super clear. This does not mean rolling over, giving up, or settling for less. It just means you stop fighting unchanging
Oh, stop your freight train. Let a lost man ride. Why don't you hear me wonder? Fare you well, darling, ain't coming back no more. Why don't you hear me wonder?
Let's tie this whole shebang together with the ultimate example of a CEO who stayed totally cool under unimaginable stress. Marcus Aurelius.
Who's been whispering
Relentless conflict.
since I've been gone so long?
By his most trusted general.
Freedom calls.
Yet, wait. Never lost his composure. He used these exact tools we just talked about. The pause, the dichotomy of control, and radical acceptance to build an inner fortress that external chaos simply could not touch. Because at the end of the day, massive workplace crisis, unfair feedback, or a blown deadline, I want you to try this. Hit the pause, check the inner dialogue, and ask yourself this one question. You might not be able to control the corporate chaos, but who is controlling you?